Hey folks, Chris Martin here. Welcome back to a special edition of the Diplomacy Academy. I say it's special because I don't know if I'm going to do any more of these or if this is going to be the last one. But I was down at DixieCon this year and not playing diplomacy. I saw something happen a couple of different times on a couple of different boards, and it made me think that this is exactly the kind of thing that I used to talk about. And it would probably be useful to bring up. I'm sure some folks would have some thoughts about it. So I kicked around the idea for a little bit, and now I'm putting this video together. And the short of it is, at some point, everybody has to learn how to lose. You have to learn to lose to learn how to win in a lot of ways. And so losing and learn doesn't teach you how to win necessarily, but you got to learn how to lose so that you can improve your chances of winning in the future, if that makes any sense. So let's look at it. You go through the middle of the game, right? You're either having success or you're not, but somebody else is having more success. And maybe it's the other side of the board is getting their act together and there's been a 2-on-1 and your side of the board is still scrambling around. Everybody's kind of playing balance of power. And you're not going to be on the top of the board, from here, from this position. And maybe even more likely, you've kind of been cut out of the alliances and you're just trying to figure out how things are going. And in the cases that I was looking at DixieCon, and I wasn't paying too much attention, just kind of listening to people talking, it became clear that there was a front runner, somebody who was going for a really big result, and an alliance had formed to stop them. And this is the thing that happens all the time, is that you'll get like one player playing Austria or playing France, playing some sort of central power that can get across the stalemate lines, gets to 13, 14 centers by themselves. Like they just stab their ally really hard, and they've gone from sort of an inoffensive 9 or 10, and now they're at 13 or 14, and the rest of the board goes, oh, okay, we got to put a stop to this, or this game is going to end in a solo. And in those cases, the players, inevitably, who are in that position, are looking for somebody on the other side of that line, in that alliance, to break away from the group, to make a move that allows them to surge forward and get to 18. So I guess the question is, the when for you, if you're in that position, you're on the other side of the line, you know you're not winning this game, like by having the most supply centers at the end of it. When should you take the chance to try and cut somebody else out of the draw, especially if you're in a coalition that's stopping a larger result, versus when should you just hunker down, suck it up, admit that this isn't going to be your game, but you're not going to let somebody else have a huge result because you're the one who put the knife in? Well, that's a very difficult calculation. And way more often than not, what happens is the person behind the lines, classically England or Turkey, gets greedy. And they think, okay, I want to be on 6 dots, I want to be on 8 dots. And I can take those 2 dots from these guys who are holding the line, and they don't really affect their position. I'll just have a slightly larger score. And sometimes it has to do with the scoring system of the tournament, or sometimes it just has to do with wanting to be in second place. But they'll go ahead and they'll just do it. They'll take those dots. And 9 times out of 10, those people who get dotted, right, 1 dotted, 2 dotted, right, are like, oh, fine. You want this game to end in a solo. Great. And they turn around and they go and they crush that person and they just walk away from their position. The person's going, oh my gosh, how did this happen? A solo? Why would you guys throw a solo? And it's ridiculous because, of course, it's the person who made the initial stab that caused it. So, how do you be in that 1 time out of 10 where that doesn't happen, right? If you're going to do that. And on the larger side, how do you convince the person to make that obviously, egregiously bad decision? So, there's a couple ways to do it. From the side of the line that is the smaller side, the coalition side, if somebody on the bigger side is pushing you to try and make this happen, you should be making outrageous demands. I mean this quite literally. You should be demanding that before you will do anything, they need to walk backwards from the line that's being held by the coalition. Like literally, okay, you're all across the circle of neutral territories, you're on the stalemate line. If you want me to do something that's maybe going to risk you getting a solo, I need you to take a year's steps back, right? Not just once, but twice. Because if you just ask them to move once, right, they might do that. And then you think, they moved back in a spring turn. Here's my chance. I'll make the stab in the fall. And they move everything back, forward. Maybe there's some bounces as your allies are like trying to take advantage of this move back and they take a step forward. But you make the stab and the people you have stabbed are still just exactly as upset as they were. So now, if you've gotten this person who's at 14 or 15 centers and really wants to have the chance at the solo, or in DixieCon at a smaller draw, which is much better for the tournament structure, then sometimes a really good player will do this. They'll be like, okay, I'll take the risk that I finish on 12 in a 5-way draw for the upside of finishing at 14 or 12 in a 3-way draw, because that's a big improvement in my score. So they do that. So then that's when you have to get back to your diplomacy game and not make the stab by yourself, right? Because again, if you just go by yourself, what's going to happen? You're going to have the people that because you're not going to be able to stab and replace them, probably, if you're England or you're Turkey, right? And if you're on the lines, you run the risk of the person who's even further behind you coming back and stabbing you. You got to have a partner. You got to have somebody who you're going to do this together with, so that you have a plan for getting back to the line. And if you can do that, good luck. It's very hard to do, because essentially what you're doing is you're kind of feeling somebody out about the idea that, hey, I'd like to be in a smaller draw. That would be good for my position. I'd like to have more dots. Would you like to? I mean, if we could make this happen, would you be open to the idea? And watch for warning signs like, yeah, no, I'm never going to do that. That's a warning sign. Don't work with that person, right? Listen to the guy who says, okay, all right, so you're saying that, like, if we could do this safely, sure, okay, maybe I would look at it. That's the person who you want to have that conversation with. But remember that the person who's making that big step back, the person who's in the larger power, is also talking to these other people. And he is working every one of them just as hard as he's working you to try and get the alliance to break. And this is the real risk. And this is the real thing that I think is very hard to learn, is that sometimes the right answer in order to improve your game moving forward is to say no. I'm going to take this result. This is the right result. And that person on the larger side of the board, person with the most dots who's trying to get a smaller draw, trying to get this all, will scream and pout, and they'll make all kinds of noises about, oh gosh, if only you let me have one more dot, then I could win this tournament. To which I think the correct response is, take it. If you can, take another dot. And if you can't, I guess you're not winning this tournament, because I guess you didn't earn it. Now, that's the diplomacy side of things, right? You see a lot of people playing the, gosh, I've been really good to you this whole game. We've had great relations, guys. Look at everything's going around, right? It's been such a nice board. You would feel good for me if I won, right? I'm like, that would be okay. I'm not trying to take anything away from y'all. I'm just trying to win this tournament. And you can be like, that's great. Take the dots if you can. Now, that is certainly one way that can go. But there's another way it can go too. And it can be the case that you're in a position where the people who, on your side of the board, they've treated you really badly. And they just haven't been able to dig you out of your corner. They haven't been able to kill you. And they realize, oh, we don't have time to finish this other player off. Now we got to get back to the line. And that's where you have the harder decision to make. Because if you take advantage of the fact that they weren't able to kill you, and now you're going to kind of come back and get your revenge, essentially you are throwing the solo, right? You can't have any illusions about what you're doing. You can't tell yourself, I'm just going to get a better position. Because you're not. Like 90% of the time, you're not going to get a better position out of it. Instead, somebody else is going to get a much better position. And you might end up getting no points, or whatever it is you get when somebody else gets a solo. The thing that you got to do is you got to sort of weigh the risk versus the reward. So if you think that, okay, in this situation, my risk is I get a crappy score versus I get an even crappier score, why do I care? Why not swing for the fences and try and get the better result? Yeah, okay, good, if you can make that happen. But If you don't know already how the tactics are going to work to stop the larger power, then you need to learn that. If you don't know already how you're going to get to the line or how you're going to deal with the upset player who you're cutting out, now is not the time to learn that. I remember hearing Jake Mannix, who's a longtime diplomacy player, very, very good top-level diplomacy player, later in the weekend round saying, I taught this lesson yesterday, and by God, if I have to, I'm going to teach it again. And exactly the scenario. Somebody had one-dotted him and his ally, thinking they could get a better position, and they threw the solo. So don't be the person who needs that lesson to be taught to them, that if you dot me when I'm on the line, I am going to throw the solo to the other player. And I guess the codicil of that is if you're on the line, you absolutely have to follow through and punish that player who dots you. You have to. Otherwise, you're teaching them and the other players that you're somebody who can safely be put on the lines, and then your dots can be farmed from you and you can be replaced. And you're not going to do anything about it. You're going to allow yourself to kind of be pushed around in that way so that you don't throw the solo. And I guarantee you that the good tournament players who play a lot know who you are if you're that kind of player. If you're the kind of player who regularly dots folks from behind, I guarantee you the other players in the tournament, the good ones, know who you are. And they are doing everything in their power to make sure you are still alive when it comes time to try and stop the solo. Because they can count on you flaking out, messing up, and giving them the shot that they need. You need to not be that person in that moment. So let's look at the other side of that. Again, when should you do this? When can you do this? Okay, so you have to do the math. You have to know where the stalemate lines are. You have to be able to ensure that you can prevent the stalemate line from getting crossed, even if the person you're stabbing pulls all of their units off the front line and throws their remaining units at you. So more than ever, this is a place where you have to make that stab count. It has to be such a convincing, devastating move that that player is left essentially helpless. And you are able to step in and fill that role. So that then, if you haven't done the whole thing where you get the ally lined up already, you can just go back to the other player and say, hey, look, I saw that this could be done. I'm replacing him. Not coming after you. You can see my units are nowhere near your units. I was just looking for a better spot in this draw. And it's already done. What do you want to do? I mean, if you want to punish me for that, okay. But then it's going to be on you, because I'm here to stop this solo. Are you really? Or are you waiting for a chance to try and stab that person too? The really good players are waiting for their chance to try and stab that person too. But maybe that's not you. Maybe in this case, you're really legitimately just trying to learn that lesson of how do you get the draw size smaller. And remember that in competition diplomacy, in diplomacy where sort of the end game states matter over time, the way that good players get solos is by creating friction on the other side of the board, by convincing people that reducing the size of the draw is good for them. Right? Good for the other player, good for themselves, right? I just want to get this down to it feels really weird to end this game with 6 people in it. Can't we get it down to 5? Oh, with 5 people? Okay, great. We killed 2 people. We're going to roll this map up and we're going to go home. Can't we get it down to 4? Come on, you guys. Let's do this. You will often hear this done when there are 2 powers on one side of the board. Like you've got an Austria and a Russia that have killed Turkey and they've turned around, and they've basically got Italy on the ropes with a couple of fleets, and now France and Germany and England are trying to stop them, right? So now you've still got 6 players on the board. Turkey's been eliminated, and feels like guessing your sister to call a 6-way draw. But if you don't, if you're the person who says, yeah, no, let's go ahead and kill Italy, and you're France, you'd better be able to handle the tactical responsibility of holding that fleet line in the Med, right? And if you're France and you're going to take out England, you would better be able to hold Scandinavia. You better be able to make sure that that player isn't going to be able to break through. If you're stabbing Germany, you got to be able to hold Munich. And if you don't know how to do those things already, the time to learn, not really in a competition game. Okay. maybe that's the only time you get to play diplomacy, and maybe this is your one shot to do it. I'd say maybe do a little more studying if you want to do this well, maybe play some online games where you can try these things out. But you're far better off, you're far better served in a community to be remembered as the player who said, yeah, no, this game is over. We're done. If you go back and watch or listen to the This American Life situation where I was Italy on the board where there were 6 of us left and Toby and Andy Bartolini Buffalo were trying to convince the other board to stab me and cut me out, you'll hear me making the same argument. You hear me on one dot saying, no, this board is done. Yeah, they can kill me. They can kill me anytime they want to, but they're not going to because they need me to hold the defenses. Did they really need me to hold the defenses? Well, I was certainly passionately arguing that they did, but also that going from a 6-way draw to a 5-way draw isn't a better result for them. Who cares? And if they try and kill me and they fail, well, then suddenly I'm going to try and help the other side. And if they try and kill me and succeed, then it's on them to stop the solo. And how confident are they that they can do that? So the people on the other side are going to be working the refs. They're going to be working your partners. They're going to be working everybody to try and get somebody to break. All you can do in that position is be the person who confidently says, no, I'm not going to break. And make your partners believe that you're not the one who's going to break. If you're behind the lines and you are not actually part of the stalemate line, move your units back. Doesn't cost you anything. You're not going to stab anyone, right? Take your units one step back off the line to show your partners that you are not going to stab them and they don't need to worry about it. And that we can call this game with a draw because you're not going to stab them and try and get a better result. Nothing is more persuasive than having England with all of their units behind the island, right? Saying, hey guys, you've got this. You've got Russia, you've got France, you're locking down and you're holding back a 17-center Turkey. I am not going to be the one who stabs you. I'm not going to ruin this. Let's end this game. You just got to remember that the diplomacy goes both ways, because every time these guys are saying, somebody will take that step back and be like, yeah, no, go kill England now. We'll get a 3-way draw. You got to be able to say, guys, I've done everything right here. And you're going to have to dig me out, and he's going to get that solo if you do that. So, all right, well, that's a lot of talking around this one idea that I had. I am really interested in what you guys have to say, as always. If you know some situations where you've gone for it and it has worked, maybe comment down below how that worked, or if you've got some good stories about how it didn't work. Love to hear them. Well, thanks a lot, guys. Until next time, I'm Chris Martin, and I'll stab you soon.